afternoon. That's so much better. I feel better. I hope you do too. Thank you for that, and thank you for being here today. Happy Mother's Day. Again, appreciate you taking time out of this Sunday afternoon to come see what we're all about. I have a couple of announcements. First, for those who realize that John Meckley is not among us again, as that he is out of town on a personal emergency, could not avoid over the weekend. So we'll send good thoughts his way. Also, an announcement on behalf of the Bicentennial Committee that is still in need of volunteers to help with the parade. And this is, I'm not working with this directly, but I talk to people who are. This is going to be a grand parade. And so we need help to make this happen and to run as smoothly as possible. And from the Milton Historical Society is looking forward and interested in new recruits, members of the group to become actively involved in that, continue the good work that they are doing. So again, welcome here this afternoon. Glad you're here. We think we have a great program for you. Where in the world would we be without maps? That's supposed to be a pun. But really, who doesn't like to read maps? Well, actually, my wife doesn't. She would rather ask directions, which of course, for any male worth his testosterone, it is just it's contrary to the laws of nature. She doesn't even use east or west, it's right or left. I mean, it just goes against the grain. It's almost un-American. I can talk to about her that way this afternoon. She's not here today. And the reason she's not here today is because she has been driving by herself to meet with some friends to Charleston, South Carolina, without a map. She made it, but it's been interesting. I know we have easy access to GPS in our vehicles and maps and iPads and smartphones, but I like a map. There are times when I like a real paper physical map. I like to see the whole picture at times rather than move an area around on a screen. I'm not a Luddite or a technophobe. I'm just old school that way, I guess. I tell my students I can't teach history without a map. I tell them they need to know where places are. They need to know something about proximity and distance. They need to know that the Louisiana Purchase included more than the state of Louisiana, that Nebraska is part of the Great American Desert, that Africa is a continent, not a country, that North Korea shares a common border with China, because where places are matters. I know we're not here today for world events or a lesson in American history. Our focus this afternoon is on local geography, or what scholars call urban geography, the study of physical structures and places that define a community. Today's topic got me thinking about the physical location and particular aspects of a town. When we hear someone mention Mifflinburg or Watsontown or Danville, for example, we form different perceptions of those towns because we visualize specific images and characteristics of each community. Even within a small town like Milton, we can see how geography matters. Growing up here, I was consciously aware of different parts of Milton. In my early years, I lived on Ridge Avenue across from the Armory. And I bet with those two reference points, many of you here this afternoon can visualize the exact block that I'm referring to. That was a small world I lived in, and I loved it. My friends lived there. We all walked to Curtin Elementary. Everything I needed was literally within a 3-minute walk. A baseball field, Jean's Sub Shop, an annual fireman's carnival that was literally held right on the street in front of where I lived, and the creek. Better known to outsiders as Limestone Run, where our activities were limited only by our imagination. So what a cultural shock it was for me when my family moved to Front Street off 3rd Street, and I attended 3rd grade at Lincoln School. That was only a short bike ride from Ridge Avenue, but for a 7-year-old, it might as well have been light years. I had to make new friends there. That was okay. but it just wasn't the same. And so I was ecstatic when we moved back to the neighborhood on Center Street near Turbot Avenue, where I could finish third grade at Curtin School, and the world was right again. Each of our 4 speakers in this program has reminded us in different ways about the importance of geography in our town's history and development. John Meckley and George Venius noted that at one time the town was divided into Lower and Upper Milton. And all of our previous 4 speakers have referred to physical sites and structures that give the community its identity. I understand why. Although inanimate, buildings, like people, hold memories. And Milton has some magnificent buildings. Almost every time I have a meal at Lisa's Deli, most recently yesterday, I marvel at the architecture along Broadway. If you have not done so in a while, you should take a close look at those buildings, especially the bay windows and the ornate trim of the roof lines. I recall on my day how that deli building housed Reader's Jewelry Store, and I know it has been occupied by many other businesses there as well over the years. I see our town's history in lots of other buildings too. Cleese's, to my knowledge, is the only remaining local corner mom and pop store in town. It's been there forever. In my day, it was Vogel's. My father-in-law used to remind me, however, that for him, it was the orange and black. Buildings like these are physical reminders of how our town has been transformed. I also can recall associations with buildings that for whatever reason no longer exist or no longer serve their original purpose. I vividly remember the intimacy of the old public library and the expansive murals along the walls of the First National Bank on French Street. And I can't imagine there are too many of you here today who don't have a memory of the Capitol Theater, or maybe Millward Elementary School, or many other such examples. For me, some of these buildings are almost like old friends because they're always there. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, I watched the demolition crew raise Curtin School. I actually had my first job there after the building came down. Some man came around, didn't know his identity then, I still don't, and he hired a few of us to knock the mortar off the bricks with a small hammer. He paid us a penny for each brick we cleaned. I thought that was a little odd, paying us to clean bricks. Who would do that? Why not just buy new bricks? But he was resourceful. He was into recycling long before it became green. And those bricks are now a house on Wilson Circle in North Hills. Curtin School lives. We are very fortunate that our speaker today will help us revisit those buildings, residential neighborhoods, and more as he takes us on a virtual journey through a notable period of Milton's past. His unique approach to urban geography using fire insurance maps will enable us to watch the metamorphosis of Milton from the Great Fire of 1880 through the 1960s when Milton had become a dynamic, prospering community. Mike Milosevic grew up at Mount Carmel, but has been living in Lewisburg since 1979. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree at Juniata College in Environmental Science and a Master of Science degree at Bucknell University in Energy and Environmental Policy. During his still active career, he works with clients to resolve environmental problems to ensure they are in compliance with local, state, and federal regulations. We thought Mike would be a great fit for our lecture series because he is not just an environmental consultant, he also uses historic maps in his business, which provide us with a unique approach to local geography. Mike will use fire insurance maps to show us how our town was transformed through the first half of the 20th century. I confess, I didn't know much. Well, true confession, I didn't know anything about these fire insurance maps. But they immediately got my attention when I realized what a valuable resource they are and that they enable to watch us the transformation of the town. Mike has been an adjunct instructor at Bucknell and Susquehanna Universities and at Penn Tech. He is a member of the Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber of Commerce and he serves on the board of directors of the Union County Historical Society. He also served as a member of the Lewisburg Council and was the town's mayor from 1994 to 1998. And in 2016, he was a candidate to represent Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. I should also note, what attracted me as much to Mike being here today, perhaps, is the mouse. In his spare time, such as it is, Mike plays the saxophone and piano with other musicians at local pubs. He won't be jamming with his sax this afternoon, but I have no doubt he will be equally entertaining as he shows and tells us about Milton's industrial history using Sanburn fire insurance maps from 1880 to 1960. Please welcome Mike Milton.
Thank you for the fine introduction. I will use the microphone in a little bit. So my first step is to introduce you to an original Sanburn map. This is a real McCoy. This is one from Lewisburg, and you can see how large they are. I will be putting this aside, and we'll be able to look at these afterwards. But this map is what we're going to be talking about. Sanburn was a specific company. Fire insurance maps are the generic term for these types of maps. And these maps are excellent guides and gives us excellent pictures of the way things were years ago. And also we have the Sanburn company, in order to make these more usable, they shrunk the maps to make them a little smaller. So these are original Sanburn maps that were loaned for us today so that we can see these afterwards. And these are just beautiful works of art. The detail is amazing. It's to scale, okay? And the descriptions of the buildings is a footprint and an image of a specific point in time. So the fire insurance companies hired people to go out and draw, literally. They were in the field making these. So what I want to do, I want to accomplish three things today. First, I want to show you how you can access these maps on the internet. I'm going to explain the symbols and the keys so that we can interpret these maps. And then I'm going to show you slides of specific areas of Milton for the next time period of about 45 minutes or so. So, let me turn this on. Sit back. Let me just warm up a little bit. I will put the microphone on. This is a cover of a map instruction guide that I had found in my research. One of the elements of any good map are three things. A north arrow so that you have a reference, a scale so that you can see what the reference is as far as distance, and another good point is a legend or a key. With the Sanburn maps, everything means something. So, over here on the left, every color has a specific meaning in these maps. For example, yellow is a wood frame structure. The pink and the other colors are either brick, concrete material. Keep in mind that the purpose of these maps were to sell to insurance companies and underwriters so that they can get a quick picture of what the risk was for a particular area or building or neighborhood. Everything has a meaning of something, and everything here, all of these symbols on the map will tell us something. And so, but before I get into that, I want to just show you how you can access these maps on the internet. And it's extremely easy. The Google search that I use here is 3 words, Penn State Sanborns. And that first link will take you to the Penn State University Library. And as you scroll down, you're going to see all of the towns and cities in Pennsylvania that are covered by these maps. In our business, we call it, a certain area has coverage. And that means at least one map exists. And we could go down until we get to Milton. It's a little different on my map, so I have to. And then the next link, it's interesting, this map goes back to when Milton was part of Lancaster County. And so when you click on this symbol, it will open up another window where it will list all of the other maps that you can get on this particular sheet or book. Each of these color codes represents a specific page in the book. Okay, and we're going to go through several of those. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to go back to the maps that I have selected for this presentation. The oldest map that I have for Milton is from 1884. And again, I'm going to show you with the arrow, and some of these maps are going to change a little bit as we go through our presentation. But here, north is to the top of the slide. A quick point about these dark lines here. You see my arrow? There's basically 2 maps on this page. These areas are not adjoining, adjacent, or contiguous. So these are 2 separate areas. So what I'm going to do is, let's see. Well, first of all, on the cover of the page of starting the book, there's usually a description about Milton or about the community. But before we get to that, I'm going to just show you the detail of this particular industry here. And this is the Milton Nail Works, and Deb Owens pointed out that this is a misspelling. It should be G-O-D. So this shows the fact that there were 2 night watchmen in this building. They had a Cameron pump, which is a fire pump, and this is telling me that they had, at this point in time in 1884, 100 feet of 2-inch hose. There was no city waterworks at this time. The fuel was coal, and the heat for the building was stoves. The furnaces and boilers did not exist at that time. So let me just back out a little bit and go down to this area here. I'm going to zoom in on the bottom right. And when you get online, you could really focus in on one particular area rather than just... All these lines are railroads, by the way. A little trouble finding this. Okay, here we are. Here's the key, and you can see how much simpler the key was on the first map. But let's just zero in on the notes that they made on Milton at this point in time in 1884. Waterworks, owned by the Milton Water Company. The reservoir was 2,000 gallons. 2 Worthington pumps drawn from the river. Average domestic pressure 60 pounds. 100,000 gallons per day, daily consumption. So again, a lot of this is related to fire safety and fire suppression. Let's just zoom in over on the left here, because one of the things that these maps also project, especially for Milton, is the Pennsylvania Canal. And here is a pond, and the canal is slightly off the map, but I'll try to pull it back here. So here's the canal running north and south, and these ponds were offset from the canal in order to store logs for the particular industry. So let's move on. We have a lot to cover. And I'll just click on this next one. As you know, one of the primary industries in Milton was Milton Car Works. Now, just a real quick reference, north is to our right. So we're looking west to the top of the page towards the river, so the canal is running from right to left. But let's just zoom in a little bit and look at this operation. So here we have a log boom pond where the logs came down into the canal through the river, and then it went to the sawmill, because in the early days of the Milton Car Works, they weren't making steel cars or tanks, they were making wooden tanks. And then you can see here's the machine shop, blacksmith shop, and again the colors, keep in mind, the colors, this is wood frame, this is either brick or block. And then as we go across, we can see the boiler house, and there's also a shop back here. And again, these are all the railroad lines. And the bottom of this map, it's the end of the map, and it just says no exposure, which means no risk or no fire exposure. Let's just go down a little bit. Let's see if I can get to the left here a little. The Milton Armory is up here in the upper left. And I'd have to, this was another little manufacturing operation. It's called Bickle and Bailey Foundry and Machine Shop. They're at the intersection of Locust and Front. So let's move on to the next one. And these are all from 1884. Let's just zoom on here. So here's the Presbyterian Church on Walnut Street. Again, the canal, with a little bridge across the canal. And here's the Murray Dougal lumber yard for their operation. Let's see what's down here. And this is just part of the exploring. So we're on Water Street. So we have the J.R. Smith and Company. And you can just see some of the, here's another abbreviation. DWG is dwelling, usually referring to residential dwelling. So this is probably a nice house, it's brick. Here's symbols like this indicate the width of the street. And there's often a description here. So back here we have a cabinet shop. And back here is packaging. I thought this was interesting. I didn't notice this before until I was preparing for this presentation. There's a company called the Economist Printing Company. So let's move on to the next one. Let's look at Front Street, because Front Street is going to give us a really good depiction. And I'm going to flip the map here to make it just a little easier to read. And that's the other thing you can do when you're on your own computer. So I'm going to zoom in here. At least I'm trying to get on the left side as much as, or the right side. And we're going to go from the top. And we can see all the businesses here on the right side. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. So here we have Hyman and Schreiber, dry goods, grocery, B&S, drugstore. And here we have a name for the entire block of buildings that is noted by this name here, which is the Krauser block. And if we just go over on this side, we can see here's the jeweler. This is vacant. And what do we have here? The Miltonian Printing Company. Hardware is down here on the bottom. I'll just slide on up. Here's an insurance office. And we have dry goods and a restaurant here. The Riverside House, or hotel, I would presume. First National Bank. And we got some vacancies here. Vacant store, a stove store, a jewelry store, drugstore again. And these little symbols here is, again, looking at the importance of these maps, is that's the location of a fire hydrant. And these are water mains in the street. And here is the canal. So let's move on to, let's see if we can get this lower one in. Oh, this is an interesting one because this was in the news a little bit. This is part of the Milton gas plant where there was a recent remediation. I can't get onto the right side, but let me go on to the next one. There are a lot of these. This is one that's right in the middle of the map, so this will be interesting to read. Here is the former W.H. Reber Milton Tannery. So let's zoom in here on a little description of what's going on. So, does anybody know, has anybody been a night watchman or a parent's been a night watchman? And what a watchman was a person who walked through buildings clicking and keeping track of where they went through at different stations. And there was a little clock on, a little key on the side of the wall. And what that meant was someone went through the building and that kept their insurance premiums low. So here we have heat, steam, fuel, spent bark, lights, gas, and coal oil. Here's a little description on the hose, 250 feet of 2.5-inch fire hose. And then 100 feet of smaller hose, and then iron fire buckets in all buildings. Let's just back up a little bit and we'll move over to this side. And these were tanks that they had, I guess, again, HO is usually referenced to house, so we have a leach house here. And here is where it looks like they had stored bark for the tanning operation. So here's tan yard, first floor, dry lofts, probably an area where they dried the tanning goods on the second and third floor. Elevator here, and ovens, another tank. And the other thing that's interesting is the close proximity of residential properties around all these buildings. And here's Limestone Creek coming through the building. If anyone has a question at any point, I take it through my presentation. So let me go back now. Now we're going to go to 1890, where this map book had a really nice cover, where the other ones did it. And I think this is the one I used for the cover of my presentation. Let's just go over to the index here, and they have a street index. Now let's just go down to M. These are the listings of all the businesses that were in the particular book. So here we have Milton, Milton Baptist Church, Milton Car Works, Milton Churn Works, formerly, Milton Gas Works, Iron Company, Knitting Company, I guess that's manufacturing, Nail Works, Opera House, Planning Mill, Public Schools, Tannery, and Water Company. And that's just in the M category. So this is, again, the index. And I want to come over to the right side, and this gives a nice little snapshot of Milton, if I can get it over. Come on over. I'm going to blow this up here. This is kind of a nice little summary of what's going on here. So, 1890, population 7,000, prevailing winds. Water facilities owned by the Milton Water Company Reservoir, 2 million gallons. 2 Worthington pumps drawn from the river. reservoir, 135 feet above pumping station, 9 miles of water mains, 41 hydrants, 41 additional. They talk about the pressure, and then I find this interesting, they talk about the fire department. Volunteer, 1 steam, fire engine, 1 hose, company or cart, I'm not sure. The amount of hose in good order, and the ground level is generally flat. And then here we have the islands.
Michael,
Yes,
I have a question.
go.
When it says prevailing winds, is that important because that would indicate which way the fire might blow?
I believe so. So the question was, why the reference to the prevailing winds? And I think that would be reference to knowing, again, why should there be a significant fire? And so, yes, that's probably the reason for that. So here we have the Milton Car Works again, and the canal. And I want to just pull in a little bit and just look at the number of railroad lines we have here on the bottom. And I want to just zoom in a little bit on the summary of the Milton Car Works at this point in time. So here we have 2 night watchmen. The lights are gas, oil, coal lights in the foundry, seldom used. Stoves in the erecting, woodworking area. City water, bucket brigades, fuel, coal, shaving, sawdust work near each boiler. So here is an oil and paint building. In doing my environmental work, this would be of particular interest for me, knowing that they had a lot of oil and or paint chemicals. And down here is the truck shop. So, and the log boom over here on the right. And so that's somewhat similar. There's not much change, and that's somewhat common that there was not much change in the previous map. So let me just zoom on to another one with some other industry. Let's see if there was any significant change in here. Here we have a lot of residential, given the yellow frame homes. And here we have a coal yard, the William Hall Coal Yards. And at that point in time, there were a lot of coal yards with regard to keeping a lot of buildings warm. So here's the Milton Trust and Safe Deposit. We're on South Front Street now. So basically, things look pretty similar, maybe a couple less vacancies. Tobacco shop, I think DG is dry goods. Here's the Milton State Bank. So let's keep moving on until there's some really great depictions of some industries. And again, here's the tannery. Let's go over to this side. This is the S.J. Shimmer Woodworking, Scheimer. So here we have a machine shop, boiler room. This is a symbol for a boiler or a furnace. Over here we have the cutter head shop being built. And here's a little description of what's going on. They have a night watchman. They have city water here. Fuel is coal. Lights are gas. And the gas, keep in mind, is coming from the gas plant on or near Center Street, where they brought coal in to make coal gas. And here is the Milton Knitting Company on Factory Street and Center. Finishing and shining, perhaps, knitting and spooling. And here we have the coal house. Just about everything back then was heated with coal. And over here we have the Jacob Fetters planing mill. And here, as I referenced before, is the Milton Gas Works. This is where the gas, with the gas lights and probably some gas cooking, was manufactured. We call these in our environmental business gas manufacturing plants. So here was a tar well. This is probably part of the reason why they had to do the remediation there, because they probably had just, this is the residual of the process, so they probably just dumped the tar there. Here's a lime house, coal storage, coal house, a shed. And here was where it was probably a tank where the gas was stored before it was sent into the community. Let's go to another one. Okay, here we have something different. Now we have the Milton Nail Works. Looking a little different from this perspective. These are all boilers and or furnaces. And as you zoom in, the nice thing about the Penn State collection is that they're scanned in very good detail, so you can zoom in without losing any clarity. So here's an ore crusher. I would presume these are engines, not engineers. And there's some terms that I would have to even look up. Muck shears. And more furnaces over on this side. And here's a term that we don't see much of, puddling furnaces. More boilers, a squeezer. And over here is a little description. 2 night watchmen, a pump, 100 feet of hose, no city water, fuel is coal, and the heat is just stoves. So you can imagine these large buildings just being heated with little stoves. And now here we have the Milton Iron Company, somewhat similar. I find these interesting, and there's still some remnants of these. This is how the coal came in, most likely, is here we have a track on trestle. So these were probably concrete trestles spaced somewhat evenly, and then a train track on top. And here's a forge, a little bit description on the night watchman, boilers, furnaces, and a rolling mill here. So let's back out. What do we have on this side? Okay, this is Milton Manufacturing in its early days. And Cameron Street would be to the bottom of the map to the south. So here we have more boilers, a squeezer, some rolls, shears, and to the top punching machines, foundry, and here we have night watchman, no clock, some small tanks. And then to the right is off the map, would be what became later, would be the Warshaw Company. So let's keep moving ahead. We're going to go to 1913 now. Let's look at the cover page and see what they say about Milton in 1913. Again, similar, everything's pretty similar now. These maps were very standardized, and that was part of their selling point. So here we have the street index over on the left, and on the right we have the various businesses. And there's our, and just look at the craftsmanship in just drawing the north arrow. So let's look at what they had to say about Milton in 1913. Let me just center it a little bit. So, population 9,000, gravity system, waterworks, entire plant owned by the Mountain Water Company. Back up a little bit here. 12 miles of water pipe. And I thought this was interesting on the fire department. 5 volunteer companies, 130 members, 3 horses, 1 paid fireman, 1 Silsby steam engine. So there's just a nice little cap shot of what's going on here. And then a little bit about the structure in the streets. Generally level except Broadway, Academy. Public lights are electric. And this I found interesting. Streets not paved except Broadway. So that's the cover page. There's the date. And that was May 1913. So let's just take a quick look at some of these. I thought this was interesting. Let's go over to the right, because there's very little, at least I don't know of any, the Milton Fairgrounds. Here's a little racetrack. Now this was to the north of Milton, I believe. Let's just zoom in here and kind of capture what this might have looked like. So here's some probably wooden bleachers. Here's a grandstand on the bottom. The judges' stand, platform. And here's the scale, as I mentioned. So here we have the location. This is a little offset of the map. So this fairgrounds was located 1/2 mile north of the post office, which was their reference point. And over on the right, we had some, I would presume, some type of stable, a shed, and at the top we had exhibition buildings. And again, noting the color, all wooden. And let's see what over here. Here's this is a signal tower. The scale is amazing. They included everything. This is probably just a signal tower for the train lines over on the right. And at the top are the refreshment stands. So there's a little bit of a capture of the fairgrounds and some recreational. Let's zoom in a little bit now and let's go back to the American Car and Foundry and see if there's anything. Now we're into more cold-drawn steel. Let's just zoom in here. And we have 4 night watchmen and a Sunday watchman. Portable clocks, 29 stations. Those are the stations that each of the night watchmen had to punch in. Half-hour rounds that they did. Power is steam, electric drive, 31 electric motors. The horsepower, again, fuel is coal, and shavings, most likely wood shavings, I would think. Lights are electric. There's some information on the boilers. The other thing that the maps had good detail and is with regard to whether or not the buildings were sprinklered or not sprinklered. And the abbreviation is NS for not sprinkled, and then AS for automatic sprinkling system. Here's the fire company that is servicing there, and it says it's mostly their employees, and some more information on the pumps and the water suppression. So there's the north arrow, so north is to the top, and there's ACF around 1913. Let's go to our next one. So I can tell real quickly, just like, okay, here's our north arrow, so north is now to the left. Let's zoom in, and here's just another view of American American Car. But let's zoom into the bottom, because now we have the Klinger Company. And again, being a wood operation, I could quickly see that most, if not all, of their facility is wood frame. So let's see what's going on at the Klinger Planning Mill. So, dry kilns, coal shed, lumber sheds. Here's some hose information. Lumber shed, and this is sash doors and blinds on the second floor, and here's some machines. So let's see what they say here. There is a watchman. I found this one interesting. Engineer sleeps on the premises, so they probably got a discount for that. Heat, steam power, fuel, coal, shavings, and some other technical information on the water suppression here. See, this is a water main, and here is double hydrant, DH. And that means there's 2 hookups for the fire hydrant there. And let's see what else is going on. This is just a little bit more on AC and F. So let's go to the next one. So I think this is, all right, this is going to be a little bit more retail and a little bit more commercial activity. So if I'm correct, this would be where Lisa's deli is, right here? Okay. And so the YMCA would be here today? No? Okay. Here's some livery stables that are in the map here. And Hotel Milton. What's going on in the Hotel Milton? Skylights. Lighting, all electric. I think these are glass skylights here. And this could, and again, the color showing brick. And then the Milton National Bank. Let's just take a walk down. We'll go on the left side here, because I think there's a lot more activity as far as retail businesses. So here we have some lodging rooms, gas office, hardware store. I would presume this is stationery, musical instruments, clothing and tailoring, perhaps a saloon and not a salon. First National Bank, a barber shop, lodging rooms, a tailor and leather goods, groceries, clothing, plumber, shoe repair, art store, jewelry. And then let's go on this side of the street and we'll go up. So we have a drugstore, telephone exchange, wallpaper, meats, millinery, shoe store, candy store, offices, printing over here. There's a steam laundry, and then the Milton Safe Deposit and Trust Company. And
I noticed that two of the banks.
I'm sorry?
I noticed that two of the banks are partially made out of block. Is that because it was stronger than brick?
I can't answer that. If there's maybe an architect in the audience that we could get some.
They're hard to break into.
Let's see what this is on the. All right, here's one of the schools. I don't know if John went to this school. Did he? This is the Washington School. Trying to get this up here a little bit. All right, let's zoom in on the Washington School. The color is telling me it's brick. Hot air, lights, gas. This is probably, oh, it's a belfry. And here's the stairway. Okay, let's back up and keep moving to the next one. And let's see what this is. Ah, the Milton High School, which is now what? All right. Let's just zoom in here a little bit. So the heat is hot air, lights electric, and there's a corridor. This is a symbol here for windows. And the number of lines means the number of floors and the windows that would go up on the subsequent floors. Classrooms. So there's your Milton High School. Okay. I think that was the main reason I had that one on this slide. As you see, houses are pretty dispersed and mostly residential, just by looking at the colors. So let's go down to the next one. What do we have here? The Susquehanna Silk Mill. Let's zoom in here and see what we can learn. AS, automatic sprinkler system. Steel truss roof, plastered wall, electric motors, a lot going on here. Metal ceiling, steel truss, weaving and warping. Here's the office, automatic sprinklers. Notice how prominent those are, because that was very important given their, the fact that, again, we're looking at fire insurance now. So here's the boiler room. Here's the symbol for a chimney. Down here where my arrow is. These are the two boilers. And it looks like they had their own generator, electrical generator here. And let's see what the notes say on this one. Let me just center it in here. Night, Sunday, and holiday watchman. Eco-magneto clock, 10 stations, hourly rounds. Power steam, electrically driven, fuel, coal, heat steam, lights electric. 200 kilowatts, automatic sprinklers throughout, except tank tower, wet system as opposed to a dry system. And then it gives the spacing, no fire pump. So there's a nice little description of the fire system there. So I think that was the main reason I had this one on this map. And you can see some of the lots. And these lots were actually pretty accurate. Let's go to the next one. This is an interesting one because I actually did some work down here recently. Here we have Milton Manufacturing on the left side. And we're still 1913. And then on the right, where I have done some work recently, is the former H. Warshaw plant. And you remember the H. Warshaw plant had those, what they called sawtooth design. And see how they had the symbol here? This was the sawtooth roof design, this little symbol here. So we have the steel truss roof, iron floor. And then over here was a little, zoom this in. This is the nice thing about the clarity. So we had a carpenter shop, first floor, electric tram, second floor. And here's all the rail lines going on that side.
Would they do these maps if there was an area that was strictly residential?
Yes, is the short answer. The main reason they did these maps were in the urban developed areas.
How often do they issue a new map?
How often did they issue a new map? It depended, I would think, on a couple reasons. One would be the market and how quickly the area was changing would dictate how often the map would be changed or updated. All right, let's go to the next one.
Mike,
Yes.
you're on Warsaw's.
I'm sorry?
You're there on Warsaw's, where now there is a pile of stones.
Right.
Stones. I had heard rumor-wise that those stones will not be removed because it's an industrial, in other words, an environmental.
No,
Is that true or not?
that is not true. The reason they left the stones there is to, when they develop the site, they want to raise it just a little bit. So it's cheap fill.
Thank you.
Okay, what do we have here? This is another offset. Notice the dark line. This is the road to Watsontown, Route 405. And this is a little recreational area. So this is a dancing pavilion that was to the north of Milton. Electric lights, no heat. These buildings are probably just little sheds. And over here we had a carousel, a little office, and no fire apparatus, and the caretaker lives on the premises.
Now, is there the trolley line shown here?
I don't see it on this map. And let's go off to this side. And here is another school, probably an elementary school. Again, this is not contiguous. It's a split here. So here's the Pollock School. And here's the Belfry. They have heat, they have electric lights. So this is just amazing, the detail that you can zoom in on these and still maintain your clarity. These are dimensions of the building. This means it's 2 floors. This is probably a porch or stairways to get into the school. Okay. Let's go on to I think we're done with 1913. So now we're going to go, we're going to do a little, this is the most interesting aspect. We just had a question with regard to the updates. There were a couple different ways they updated these maps. This map covers 1927 to 1963. And I want to just take some time and explain this little card here. So what this little card on the left shows is these were various updates where people came and borrowed the map from whoever had it at that time, took it out into the field, and then made various updates. And the updates were 1937, 1943, 1948, 1954, 1958, and 1964. And these are the initials of the Sanburn employee and the actual date. And if you look closely, I'm going to follow my arrow, and you see how this is a slightly different color? That was cut out and pasted on this map. And the updates were done the same way. And then here we still have the same key, and this is just a little bit of another version of what Milton was like in, get it over here, I think it was 54. So population, 8,578. Prevailing winds northwest this time. Now we have approximately 49% of the streets unimproved. A little description on the water supply, the fire department, and structural regulations. I thought this was interesting that the borough passed an ordinance that no wooden shingles permitted. Okay, let's go on to the next. There's a couple extra here, because this covered such a larger time span. Here's another coal yard, the George Yoakum Coal Yard. And again, coming from Mount Carmel, I find these kind of interesting. Here's a conveyor system that must have come out of the coal shed to a coal elevator, and perhaps this is where trucks got loaded. Here's a horse shed, coal shed, and here's a coal trestle. So the coal came most likely by rail and was dumped off the trestle, came back out and for local distribution.
Mike, I have a question.
Go ahead.
In the 1913 map, the population was 9,000. And then this last one, which was 37, I forget the date. It was
87.
8,000 something.
Right?
So why would the population have gone down? Is that something to do with flooding?
I can't answer that. Perhaps George Minos, or maybe it was just an estimate.
Maybe somebody here would.
Yeah.
Well, there was the 1936 flood, so maybe some of the houses were taken because of the
Yeah.
flood.
When was that map, or that estimated population?
I think that was 54.
So then people started to move out of the borough, the Mahoney Manor area.
Okay, here's another, now we're back downtown. We have the Masonic Temple, Hotel Milton Annex, and here's the First Presbyterian Church, Sunday School. There's an undertaker, again over on the left, yellow. The D is for dwelling, so those are all residential. And here is Milton Junior High School with an addition. If you look, you can see the outline of how it was updated with the paste over. Okay. And here's one we haven't talked about yet, the Milton Shoe Company. So I had done some, actually this was my first maybe introduction. I had done the environmental work when the Putterman family sold the building to the Coons Brothers, right. And so I was researching this. So here we have, again, different structural, steel columns, beams, metal deck.
See, the shoe company bought that from the Susquehanna Silk Company. That was the Susquehanna Silk Mill on Hebert Street.
Right. Okay, we've got a couple more left. This is one of interest. So here we have the Dairymen's League Cooperative Association, Milton Plant and Creamery. Now sometimes they'll actually put the date right on here, like they did here. Built 1921, fireproof construction, except exposed under flanges. Here's an ice plant. They do have a night watchman, but lights. And back here you can see, this looks like a little paste over. This section was also built in 1921, and here they manufactured condensed and powdered milk. Let's see what's up on the top. So we're on the intersection of Willow and High. And here we have a service garage. 5 cars, paint spray booth. This is, it's a little blurred here, but you see this little circle here, and you see GT. An old colleague of mine, Tom Yannicone, is here. This is something that I would look for in my business because GT stands for gas tank. And that would most likely have been an underground tank. So that's one of the reasons why I look for and work with these maps, is for information like that, if someone was purchasing.
There was a trucking company there.
Okay.
That was Miles, they hauled milk.
Right.
All right, we're a little, now we're in a little further south of town. And here we have 1960 construction. This is the bowling lanes. NC, I believe, would be an abbreviation for non-combustible. Here they have described the suspended ceilings in this section, steel frame, concrete floor, FL, RF, roof. And let's see what else is down here. Oh, I believe this is near what's now Klingers. Not Klingers, right, the lumber company. So here it looks like they started out as a plumbing wholesaler, and then in front there were 2 residences, and here was monumental works, headstones and things like that, I would presume. Okay, we have a couple. The later maps added more to the southern part of town. I found this one most interesting because every small town had their own power plant, and just to orbit, here's the river, and this is the railroad bridge going across the river, and this is where the service station, okay, and the car wash, I believe, would be this area. So here's, again, another reason why I would find these maps very important to me is we have 2 gas tanks on this side of the building and 2 gas tanks on that side, and S service station is pretty clearly marked. But over here, this was a small power plant, I would presume by PP&L, and then it became a substation. And the reason, because here we have the tracks on trestles, this is where coal would have come in by train car, and now it's a substation, like a transfer station, a switching station. And I don't know, okay, let's keep moving. There's a couple more left. So we can't go without this big boy, American Home Foods, Division of American Home Products Corporation, Chef Boy RD Division, Food Packing Plant. Let's see what they have to say about this. Watchman with clock, power, steam, electric, fuel, coal, heat, steam, chemical extinguishers, and some more information about the fire suppression equipment. Concrete floors, first and second, steel with beams. So there's a lot of information there. And this is also part of their loading area, sorting, and actually this map goes off on another page. When I got this copy, I had to go on to another page. And here's a little bit more description now on the Warsaw operation that came later than the previous map. So we were at night watchman, steam, electric, all pretty much the same. Heat was coal. And here's an interesting little detail in just working on this property. Is you go over here, and there was a scale as trains came in, and there was a little building, scale house. And here was the big chimney that was recently removed. Okay. And here's Milton Machine Works. Manufacturers of machine parts, no night watchman, factory, building, storage, concrete floor. Here's a 6-inch water main coming in. And just more description of the factory. Here's the office, abbreviation is OFF. And here's another, now this is a wood trestle, probably bringing in fuel by train. Here's a good example of what happens with these maps if you get an update of one. You can see the different color here. I'm going to take my arrow along the side here. So whatever was here was probably removed, and then the Sanburn company pasted over it, so showing that it was raised. Sometimes they'll make a notation that it was taken down.
That was the site of the Dutch nail works.
Okay, the nail work company. All right, let's see what's here. Oh, this was the power plant from PP&L. This was the boilers, 4 boilers, generators. They called them dynamos back then. Power, steam, lights, electric, vacant power plant. Okay.
That's where the pumping station is for the Pennsylvania American Water Company.
Okay, great. Good orientation. And where are we here? This is where we are. This is where we are right now. I think Deb, are we in this area? Yes. Okay. So let's look at the Milton area joint. The other thing that they did a really good job on, here's the borough township line, right here. And let's just read a little description of. So, non-combustible material, that's nice to know. Built in 1955, concrete floors, metal deck, roof, suspended ceilings, 12-inch concrete block. There's a brick, concrete block, a couple of abbreviations I have to refresh myself with the guy. Apron walls, 1 to 5 feet metal, 80. So there's a lot of detail here, and I'm often even going back to the guide to refresh. Here's the cafeteria. That is all I had for the ones I selected. You've been a great crowd. I have more, and I could go on for a while, but I could take some questions. We could wrap this up. I don't know what our time is. You want more?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
With regards
Could you stand? I can't hear you. Could you stand up?
Okay, these maps were done for insurance purposes.
I still can't hear you.
These maps were done for insurance purposes.
Yes, the maps were specifically done for insurance purposes.
Were they available to volunteer fire companies?
They-
So that if there was a fire, they would be able to use them as a reference?
They probably could have been. I believe that the main purpose of the maps were to sell them to agencies like the Cout Agency or the Mensch Agency, because the purpose was to underwrite insurance policies. And the history of these maps, they were actually started in New York City after a pretty serious fire in 1845. And it was so serious that a lot of insurance companies went out of business, and the underwriters had to get together and come up with a system of underwriting a lot of properties. And so the map started in New York City, and actually Mr. Sanburn was a surveyor, and he worked in the mid-1800s as an employee of Aetna Insurance Company. And so that's how he got into this business. But the main purpose of the maps were to be sold to insurance companies and insurance underwriters. And that's why there's so much detail there. I don't think, given the amount of detail and access to the maps, probably would not have been of much value to the fire companies going out in that era. Unlike today, where they're probably in communication with 911 and they know what they're getting into before they get to a fire. Any other questions? Yes?
What's the most recently maps like these have been made? Like you stopped at 63, what's between then and now?
This industry, the fire insurance map industry, basically went out of business and ceased making these maps in the 1960s. I think there were business reasons and just technology with regard to our own communications, photography, more insurance companies. Now we have, when we get an insurance policy, our local insurance agent comes out to our house. So there was really no need for them. That's why these are so important to preserve, because they have a great snapshot of what existed then. Just blow this up as long as we're talking. And also, before you leave, feel free, we're going to spread these other maps out so that you can see the real map. We have several copies. We'll turn the lights back on. But I'll take any other questions with regard to this. I think it's fascinating. And this is just the importance of preserving history. And so many people still use these besides myself. I know an architect who does historic preservation. He often makes reference to these.
No, get down.
Any other questions?
No, let them on. Get down.
Going once, twice. Thank you. You've been a great audience.
Thanks, Mike, for a terrific job. Very enlightening, insightful look at our town's history in this past day. Before you go, or welcome again, as Mike said, come up and look at the maps. First, I neglected to mention, with respect to the Milton Historical Society, there's information on tables out as you exit here, you take a look at it. And again, I'm also impressed with your collective knowledge of the history of our town and some of your comments and questions recently. And again, we would also encourage you to consider the Historical Society, because it can't run without good people like you. And obviously, you have an interest in that, or you wouldn't be here this afternoon. Also, the next lecture, which is the last lecture in this series, goes fast, doesn't it? Number 6 will be 3 weeks from today, June 4. And I mention this for several reasons, because it is the last one. Because the topic, which is Governor Pollock, Milton's own governor, and because the speaker, Glenn Bailey from Mifflinburg, is going to talk about Governor Pollock, and also kind of give us a representation or sort of reinterpretation, reenactment with Pollock, and as he puts in his title there, his friend Abraham Lincoln. And James Pollock indeed was a very interesting individual outside and beyond Milton, at least a semi-major player in national affairs. Also, with regard to that, lecture in 3 weeks is well timed. Well, we try to do it that way, and is going to set up what is going to happen in the week after that, because this bicentennial thing is really going to start to get busy at that point. There's a week after that, events will happen almost on a daily basis. And with respect to Pollock and Hebron as well, we're going to dedicate 2 state historical markers to them. It was originally scheduled for Parade Day, but we decided that it's going to be a very, very busy day. And so we moved that 2 days earlier to Thursday, June 17th, that will immediately precede, I think it's the first of the Music in the Park program that runs all summer long at Lincoln Park. For those who've been there before, for those of you who are interested in music, my understanding is going to be 4 bands there that night, so it's going to be a pretty big deal. So, as I say, lots of stuff is going to start happening. The pace is going to be picking up very, very quickly here, very soon. So, and again, I thank you so much. Sorry, yeah. Bill?
The Historical Society is contemplating continuing the lecture series from time to time, maybe once a quarter.
Okay, yeah, I talked about, yeah, we'll try it, yeah, and of course, we'll get the word out.
If anybody's interested.
Yeah, okay, we'll definitely keep you informed of that, no question, thank you for that. Again, we thank you for taking time out of a beautiful Mother's Day to come listen to our Mike on the subjects, talk to us about our town and its history, and hope to see you in 3 weeks.